and I'm now going to take my camera into the limelight of my computer. I've got my spotlight on it, and I've got a bill from npower for me in my hometown in Scotland. Now they are telling me,
George, hang on mate, you're going to have to start again because you've completely faded out.
Sorry, I've just laid the microphone down. It's not a conspiracy theory, I just laid the microphone down. I do that a lot.
That's okay, that's fine.
Okay, so there's my npower bill, and what they're telling me is that they have not read my meter, but they're going to give me a slight discount because I'm a new customer to them, which is a myth. But the fact that they bill you based on the average customer's bill in your region, if they don't have a meter reading, if you want a meter reading, they ask you to take one yourself. Now let me tell you what this corporate number is for this company, because this is npower, and we're being billed by npower North Limited, registered number 3432100. And if I've got any whinging to do, then I write to customer service director, a chap called Gareth Pickles, with a very famous name, Pickles, in terms of politicians in the UK, right at the top of power at the moment. So this is me getting billed. So I'll have a look at that company's directory and its register on Company Check, and blow me, they're not based in Scotland, they're based in Swindon, in Wiltshire. And when I find that corporate number, I find that Gareth Pickles is not a director of that corporation and the registered company there. But I do find that the net worth of that company, and wait for this John, the net worth of that company registered in Swindon, which is billing Scottish energy consumers, and every year they impose a price hike of 20% on the customers in Scotland. This year, because of pressure from activists and researchers who are unpaid to do the research, they've reduced the price hike to 17%. So we talked about
3%.
Yeah, so a 3% drop. The government tell us, and Nick Robinson at the BBC tell us, that we're in a revival period and inflation is confined to somewhere between 2% and 3%. It's a crock of lies. Can I tell you the net worth of the company before you add any commentary to that? The net worth of this company, with the same company number that I've just cited, is minus £786 million.
I know. Well, we know where it's gone, don't we, George? It's in all the other videos.
No, it's just the declaration that they make. Because if you look at the other npower Northern Limited, which has a company number of 02845740, and you look at the net worth of that company, which is also based in Windmill Hill, Swindon, it's worth zero at the bank. So what you've got there, it's clearly tax season, and they're making a declaration that they're in the red, so they get tax back from the Inland Revenue. As a
whose tax money is that?
Well, it's the company is insolvent, according to the declarations of those two things, and what they're doing is they're levying an average bill on Scottish customers because they have no capacity to meter the consumption of Scottish customers. And what they ask the Scottish customer to do is read the meter for yourself if you want to check out your actual consumption. But we're quite happy to give you an estimated bill based on the average for the country. And that bill, between February and March this year, it went up by 17% in one simple step.
You know what's coming next, don't you, George?
Well, the tax on breathing that we talked about yesterday.
Well, the smart meters are coming next.
I'll believe it when I see it. I'm now going to take the npower bill away so that I can show you a series of pictures that I've taken of what they're billing us for in Scotland. it's exactly the same product as we had when I was 6 years old in my hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll put some pictures up on the screen now. Of
Can I just say, George? This one I'm doing is basically in case you get shut down. So they'll have to go to your channel.
well, that's right. So I've now focused on the screen, and I've got a series of pictures. I'll try and keep the microphone up there so that you can continue to hear me. But this is just the infrastructure and the plant and machinery, and you can see from the signs that none of it is new. It was there in the same place when I was 6 years old, and that is 1963. Was that the year that Kennedy was shot?
61, wasn't it?
No, I think it's 50 years this year. So it was 63, 64.
Sorry.
So what we're getting billed for by these globalized companies, and the parent company for npower is actually called RWE npower, and that is the company that Gareth Pickles.
You've just cut out again, George.
Gareth Pickles is registered not with npower, where he's the complaints director. He's registered with RWE npower, and on LinkedIn he actually lives in Edinburgh. But his company that he's registered with is the European subsidiary, so you can't find him in any of the directorial listings, because in Europe they can tuck the money away without any regulation, as we've explained to you before.
Exactly.
And when you see what the corrupted directors and secretaries are that they use, have you heard of the legendary Swift? Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got Swift have crashed in their tenure 2,063,000 companies out of 2,660 companies that they've worked with.
Not bad, eh?
Yeah, and it is just, and Swift is notorious. If you listen to Gordon and I talking about them, they're almost as notorious as Company Secretaries Limited.
Yeah.
And you know, the other companies that we talk about. There's another company called Hackwood Directors that's been used by them. They have crashed 2,054 of 2,421 companies that they've worked for. Gareth Pickles, as I said, is not listed on any of the corporate directors that you're allowed to whinge about, allegedly, and the call centre for the company that's billing me with that company number I cited and being 786 million in the red is in a town called Peterlee. So the staff that you're whinging at are completely disconnected about the people you're complaining about. And this is, you know, this is just one of the big six.
Yeah.
And they've got umpteen subsidiaries. They've got these European extensions of it now, and everything that they're selling it based on an estimate. If you want your meter read, you have to read it yourself, and it takes months to catch up with the truth on how much you've consumed. So what they've done is just bill me with a guess, and I'm going to refuse to pay it until they show me that they've got evidence on what I've consumed. And I'll get my gas and electricity cut off, but it will be cheaper that way. It would be far cheaper for me to run a generator at the back.
Well, when my bills come in, George, if I don't have the money, I just don't pay them. But I've never been cut off.
Yeah, well, they're incapable of doing that. You see, they've got no idea who the customer is. They've just got a house. They don't supply the gas and electricity there. They just bill you for it. It's a massive scam.
Yep.
And the gas and electricity here, if you look closely at those pictures, that's the gas distribution point in a place called Henderside Estate, and it's been there since the early 1960s. And if I scan up a wee bit, you get even older plant machinery than that, because on Kelso Bridge, where I live...
Cutting out again, George.
Okay, that's just that the microphone's a bit further away from me.
Not completely, mate. Can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Alright, well this is a genuine...
Now you're back, now you're back.
This is a genuine panic attack by them, because I'm now showing you gas lamps on Kelso Bridge that was built by an engineer called Mr. Lees way back when. It's centuries old. They've had a revolt on that bridge, because the elites that we talked about the other day that built the bridge and own town councils, own district councils, own governments, and send the colonists to the colonies for stealing bread.
Yeah.
When they built the bridge, they got the citizens to pay for it, and you know how they do that, don't you?
Toll roads.
Yeah, a toll. So way after we had paid way over the value of the bridge and its building.
Exactly, you never stopped paying for it.
Well, they had a revolution here, and they lopped a couple of folks' heads off in the elite sector, and that got a lot of folk into a lot of trouble. But that was the genuine working class revolution on the end of that bridge that you see there, and the gas lamps there that you see it, you know, they were driven by genuine Kelso gas, because when I was young in the 60s we had what do you call those big gas containers that were inflatable and deflated as the content?
Oh yes, there used to be one in Battersea.
We just used to call it the gas house, but I forget what you call the containers.
There is a name, I grew up with those, but I just can't think of it.
But otherwise, you know, the rest of it just gets piped in from Grangemouth or wherever it's produced. I've got no insight into where it is produced. But npower, when you look at their history on, you know, Wikipedia, that it's only about the Yorkshire Electricity Board was consumed and built into it, and the Southern Electricity Board was consumed and built into it during that era. And you know, during the deployment of one of the companies, it's a company, and strangely enough you talked to me about the man Dees that produces all the images, but there's a...
George, do you see that image there?
Of the gas lamp?
No, oh sorry, you can't see mine.
No, I'm looking...
Dave Dees, because I've been in contact with him for years, he sent me his latest book, signed. I've got his signature on it. That's one of the pictures you're seeing now of Barack Obama holding out the blue pill.
Well, ask him...
His images are first class.
Ask Dave if the reason he's being kind to us is because he's related to Dickinson Dees, the company secretaries and the company directors.
He's related to them.
Because they've worked with npower Supply, another subsidiary, and they have crashed 716 of 832 companies that they've handled, and I call them now the thin blue line, because when Dickinson Dees worked for npower Supply, they worked for 2 days in 1993. The whole thing was privatised in round about 2000, according to the literature in Wikipedia. I don't know whether you can trust that.
George.
Yeah?
Trying to link Dave Dees to these people.
No, I'm not trying to do that. It's just a coincidence as far as I'm concerned.
Because the thing is, George, I can trace my ancestry back to Sir William Patterson with one T, who was involved with the Bank of England. Well,
there's a Lees. The Lees on the court of the Bank of England is the director at the Bank of England. Did you know that?
Go on.
There's a Lees on the court of the Bank of England.
No, I didn't know. No,
with Dave Prentice and the Cairn director.
Okay.
Cairn CEO. The CEO of this company. Oh no, sorry, that was the BT issues that we were talking about earlier on. But you know, if you look at the history of it now, in 2002 it was acquired by RWE of Germany. It was formerly National Power. So these are nationalised assets. The Southern Electricity Board was built by the Scottish Government. It was staffed by Scottish people. All the engineering was done by Scots. And now what we're doing is we're paying the new German owners of RWE for everything that is being stolen from us. And for every one of these 20% price rises, you've got a whole list of German directors. Now I can reel some of those off if you want. There's a Klein, there's a Jobs, there's a Polig, there's a Birnbaum, there's a Weingard. Yeah, and so it's all European names that are on the directorates out of Swindon in England. It's a globalised nightmare, and for the consumers it is just theft.
It's theft, that's it.
And it's very, very deceitful for the Energy Minister and Nick Robinson and all of the Fox News teams to try, and the BBC News teams and the ITV and Carlton News teams that we talked about, who now make ads in money-making companies to deceive customers that virtual oil and gas companies like Cairn Energy and like all of those ones that Gordon so objectively describes as absolute frauds, with just coupons in the Caymans and the mail forwarding centre at 50 Lothian Road processing 2,400 companies that are frauds run by Knights of the Realm like Sir Bill Gamble, and with chairmen who are people right high up in society. The Cairn CEO that led to the resignation of the Vedanta Cairn scam of the Prime Minister Singh in India, the CEO of Cairn, is on the court of the Bank of England regulating the issuance of money for the country, along with Dave Prentice, the union leader. It is an absolute scandal that all of Britain's assets, and indeed all of European assets, the creation of Gazprom and the pan-European transport of gas using that Russian company, is a scandal. They charge what they like for the products, and the products are the same products that were coming out of Russia when the Russia was demonized. And you know that Russia's been run by the West for centuries.
Yeah.
And when I told you that Henry Kissinger, the world's biggest killer and the peace laureate, is on the board of the Future of Russia Foundation with, you know, various Rothschilds and connections to the British monarchy, it just makes you feel sick. And in Ukraine, they jailed the opposition leader who negotiated the Gazprom contracts, and they drugged her up on antipsychotic drugs. You saw quite a lot of weight gain, which is a typical side effect for Miss Tymoshenko. But the irony is that their mum, the opposition leader in Ukraine, was in jail when the Ukrainian leader defected to Russia and sparked off all of the contentious issues that we now have there. But you know that Britain, in the form of Knights of our realm, are manipulating the geopolitical prospects in Ukraine, because we told you the other day about Lord Markham of Ukraine, who in Rochdale, near Cyril Smith's constituency, where all the false flag things about paedophilia and sexual deviancy have been released, that man, Lord Markham of Ukraine, is known as Rayner. It's his simple name, and he runs Crown Oil and all those virtual oil and gas frauds out of the UK that are undermining everybody's pensions and saving schemes. So I just want you to know that whoever your supplier is for your energy bills have been rising just as fast as Scottish energy bills, and the whole thing is a massive fraud. The product was built by Britain in the nationalised industries, and every time Gordon talks about asset stripping and the imposition on our country of the only thing now that investment funds can invest in are frauds. They are selling virtual products, and Bill Gamble started his company in his garden shed. There is no production unit there. He just sells the shares and the coupons, and the glossy brochures now get made by companies like ITN, Carlton, Ingenious Films LLP, and they'll make you a magnificent film of an oil tanker that's brand new, never been used, and it's certainly never seen any oil, because none of the corporation has any oil to trade, And if you call the call centre at Crown Oil and ask them where their international production units are, you will gobsmack them, because they're just there to cheat the customers and sell the share stocks.
There you go. It's incredible.
Is that enough for tonight? You said you were. Have you got anything to add on you?
It's always enough, mate. 10 minutes of this is enough for me. It's enough to make you sick, isn't it?
Well, it's enough for me to be tempted to try and prosecute the man that is asking me to pay for this. They're in a debt pool of 786 million. I have no doubt at all that that statistic will change by tomorrow morning, now that they know that we're on to this particular subsidiary, but all the rest of the subsidiaries in all the big six, which is something like 100 actual subsidiaries in the UK alone, and then the European extensions of it. And when it gets into Europe, there's no way that you can track the proceeds of this, as we've talked about before. That's why they use the laundering tools and those instant secretaries. The Npower, they used Dickinson Dees for 2 days in 1993, and that is tied to the deployment of companies like Swift. So that, you know, they get one corrupted director, or very often nowadays they get Swift to be both the director and the secretaries. That's what they've done with Hackwood for one of the European corporate Hackwood were used, and when they were used as both directors and secretaries, they have got a history in 2000 of crashing 2,054 of the 2,421 companies they dealt with. It is absolutely vicious. It's profiteering on the grandest scale, and all these guys do, they're director only companies, so they just sit in the boardroom and they sign off on the profits that come into their pockets. They have no idea in what they're selling, and I have no idea where Npower get the gas that they now sell, but it comes through the same distribution points as it did when the gas board in Scotland was nationalised, and it came into those same distribution points in 1963. It was made by the nation and traded cheaply by the nation to innocent people that helped create that nationalised company. And you know,
and the same people are going to bring these scum buckets down, George.
Well, you know, Edinburgh is in austerity. Edinburgh has been scammed for its trams, its hospitals, its Parliament building, and Gareth Pickles is brave enough to be up there receiving feedback on all these things. You can find his picture on the internet, but you cannot write to him because the call centre is in Peterlee. It's got nothing to do with any of the corporate headquarters or any of the production units. It's probably, I don't know whether or not in Peterlee, that's the post office box number, is in Peterlee, and you know all about the call centres and the deployment of Mumbai and the Asian cheap labour sector. Yeah, it is just vicious. Crimes against the people committed by knights of the realm, and they get their knighthood for stealing from the people, as we've seen so often in stories that I've told you recently. As soon as we released the news on Ewan Brown, who crashed the banks in 2008, he gets his knighthood within 3 weeks of our disclosures and our publication online in HRH's birthday honours list. It is vicious, and it is gonna come crashing down.
You better believe it. You better believe it.
Thanks to innocent and helpful and decent people like yourself just talking about it to other decent people on the street corner. And because we know...
This, George, there's very few people you can talk to because this is so big. It goes over most people.
But now that we're talking in simple terms, this story I'm telling you now is impacting on every household in the UK.
Exactly.
20% year on year, their pay in the public sector has been frozen throughout that period. We talked about INEOS. They wanted a 1% pay rise at what is actually a BP subsidiary still. That BP subsidiary is actually a Lonrho subsidiary still, as Gordon explained that BP are still the bosses for Centrica, and that all of those companies are subordinated to Lonrho. The unacceptable face of capitalism, even when Ted Heath was in government, when I was a boy in the 1960s. Yeah, the whole thing is a closed loop, and it's a privatization capitalist nightmare. BP Rosneft is the Russian subsidiary of Lonrho, and that was sold to them. The merger there was within the last 18 months, and all of the gas and oil, the price at the forecourt, as we talked about yesterday, is absolutely manipulated at the people's expense. That's why Gaddafi was killed, because he wanted to keep the prices in his country at the actual level of the value of the product, and he wanted to keep the issuance of his own currency in the hands of his own national bank, which is why they topped him. They topped him in a ditch. You remember that? You still there? Okay, they've just cut John off on Skype. Are you still? Oh yeah, sorry, it's just my screensaver. I just have to put the mic.
I'm still here, George.
Can you confirm that in England the price hikes for your energy in your district are just as grave as they are in Scotland? Can you confirm that? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did, but to run off and start going through bills now.
Oh yeah, I just wondered whether you had any awareness of it. Because
all bills are going up.
Yeah, but not like the energy bills are. It's the biggest burden that every household has to bear, and 5 years back to back, 20% a year. You know, they're doubling the prices, and the product's just the same, and the winters get colder.
Exactly.
And that is an opportunity for them to manipulate it again. But the manipulation of the oil price at the forecourt is a scandal, because I told you the other day that Greg Hallett had revealed for me, and Jeff Rents in America has revealed, that the Russians, since the Cold War, have understood entirely why the price, why the oil, it's nothing to do with fossils and dinosaur remains.
That's right, it's below the fossil line where they drill.
Yeah, and how did you learn that? It was not from me. You knew that when
there was a general, and it's a famous. It's on YouTube, and he explains that the Russians found out that oil was not a fossil fuel. It's a myth.
That's right, and the research is excellent.
It's actually produced well below the fossil line. That's where they drill for it, and it continually replaces itself.
That's right, and the proof of concept experiments have been done in Russian labs, and I've republished them under an article on my website, Professor George Lee's /revelations. If you look up Gazprom, the fraud, in the index on the left hand side, you'll see the experiments that were done with basically chalk, calcium carbonate,
exactly,
chucked in with some moisture into a pressure cooker at the atmospheres, at the pressures and the temperatures that are achieved deep in the Earth's core. You get chains of short chain hydrocarbons that mimic what we have to separate in the refinery at Grangemouth, where they refused them a pay rise of 1% to sell a product that is eternally produced by our blessedly free world. Yeah, the universe is a magnificent creation. The oil is made within the earth for free and will never run out unless they reduce the subterranean pressures by nitwit policies like fracking. Can you see the implications of making the porous crust porous? Yeah, by doing that, what they're doing, it's undermining the beauty and the ecology of the earth that gods gave us. I don't know how many gods there are, don't know what gender they are, but they made this a beautiful self-sustaining place, and it's being brutalized for cash. and the mythology about the dinosaurs and the exhaustible resource that is oil and gas in the existing plants is a vicious profiteering myth. And
I'll tell you, you've done a good. Your mate Rents. He done a huge article.
Yeah, that's where I got the original citations.
Yeah, but I'm trying to find the general.